Well, we're into the 2020 holiday season, and if you've been around Baptist church or Baptist people, you've heard the name Lottie Moon. Sometimes we get the impression that she might be an aunt that lives down the street or in the next county, but that's not quite correct. She was born in 1840 in Virginia to a very wealthy family. She had sisters. She was the fourth of 5 sisters and 2 brothers. A family that was very progressive, very wealthy. They had a huge tobacco plantation and were very strong on education. They were also a family that was very active in the Baptist church in their particular area. So Lottie grew up in an area that is very different from ours. She grew up in a turbulent time. She was a teenager during the Civil War. She was a teacher and a missionary following the Civil War in the South. And then she was a missionary to China. So we'll touch a little bit on her life. Her education was very progressive. She had a sister that was a doctor, and her sister was with the Confederate Army, serving as a doctor during the Civil War. She had a younger sister that went to China and became a missionary there. So most of her life here in southeast United States dealt with education. She was a teacher. She taught in girls' schools, and she had friends started would be the equivalent of high school for girls in Virginia. But it wasn't. She didn't become active in the church until she was pretty much finished her education. And she attended a revival with a friend. Even though she'd grown up with Baptist teaching, it wasn't until she was a young adult that she really gave her life to Christ. And so she had a turbulent life simply by the fact that following her trip to China, it was only almost a year. Her sister became ill and returned to the United States, but Lottie Moon stayed in China. She was frustrated because she's very bright. She was fluent in the classics, Greek and Latin, and she was also fluent in Italian and French. And then later on in her life, of course, after living in China, she became very fluent in Chinese dialects. She was not satisfied with being put in a box. Education was prominent for girls at this particular time, but jobs were scarce. And her life had revolved around teaching, and so when she was in China, she went with missionary wives that served in the coastal areas, in the city areas, not in the rural areas. And but Lottie wasn't satisfied with that, and it was when she was in her 40s, mid-40s, 45 or something like that, she moved inland. And as she moved inland, she had to find a way to contact and make connections with the natives in the area. And it was at this time she became a full-time missionary. She became very evangelical. She was attributed to leading many of the Chinese in the area where she worked to Christ. And she was also very prolific in writing letters. She could deal with the different boards, and she found that she could expand her work to make it more fulfilling for her and more what Christ would have her to do. And she also found that, like all of us do, sooner or later, there's a money issue. And so she started a writing campaign. And this writing campaign dealt with writing back to friends in the United States, telling them about the conditions of inland China and the horrible living conditions. They were wars and revolutions and famine, and anything that you can think of was rife throughout that area. And the natives suffered tremendously. Starvation was not unusual in that particular area. One thing that Lottie did to identify with these people she was trying to reach for Christ is she lived in the same living conditions. She ate the same food. She didn't have anything special for herself. She lived exactly as the people she was trying to reach. So as a result, money issues grew. So she wrote to her friends, and like women do, oftentimes they get little clusters and they develop groups of women that were seeking fundraising. At the same time, which makes sense if you think about it, they started what they called the Sunbeams, which was a missionary-focused little lessons for small children. Well, if the mothers were going to mission group, then there weren't babysitters, in that particular time, so they took their children with them. So as a result, then we had the mothers in their mission group, the children in their mission group. And they started a fundraiser, and the first one was focused around the Christmas holiday. And Lottie was asking for funds, and so they started collecting. And the reason they organized was the fact that they had to have some way to distribute the money that they collected. So in 1888, they had collected $3,315. And this was enough money to send 3 missionaries to China. Well, as a result of that, this grew. But there were other issues that she dealt with. And one of them was the fact of the idea that you go to the mission field, you die on the mission field. And she did take 2 what they called furloughs, and they were calling them furloughs way up into the 60s and 70s. And she realized the need for the people, the missionaries, to have a way to retreat from the pressures that they dealt with day after day. And so she formed the idea that maybe every 10 years the missionaries should be taken back home through the organization so that they could have a time of rest and renewal, and then return to the field then after a period of time. So this was one of the management things that she did. She was a fantastic manager. She had a fantastic way with kids, and she was really willing to let the Lord lead her in whatever she tried to do. She was, excuse me, and I was talking about that she ate the same thing that the natives did. Well, she went without also, and she got down to 50 pounds. She only weighed 50 pounds. She was actually starving herself along with the people that she was working with. And so friends got her on a boat to return to the United States, but it didn't get out of Kobe Bay before she died en route home. All of her belongings was in one chest, one cedar chest or luggage of some kind that she had. That was her life savings. That's the things that she had that went home with her to her family. Since that original offering in 1888, there's been $1.5 billion through these offerings that we have had that have gone to foreign missions, not just China, but throughout the world. Wherever the missionaries go, this offering that's gone with them. So our mission offering this year is a little more than what we've had in the past, but that is simply because the need is greater also. The fact that we're dealing with a non-traditional year in our lives. So we have a joke that I share with friends, that there's more to Beatrice Potter than Peter Rabbit. And as I was doing this little bio, I found there's more to Lottie Moon than cookies. And if you look on the internet or any place, you'll find Lottie Moon's recipe for her cookies, even today. I just want to leave this message with you that this was a lady that gave her life for her Lord. And I mean literally her life, because she didn't even make it home alive. She died en route. So I want to thank you, but during this season, just remember that when you hear the name Lottie Moon, we're talking more about just one lady. We're talking about an offering that has grown throughout the years and supports our missions in many areas throughout the world. And I want to thank you very much.